Good evening, everybody. I'm very pleased to see what is a nice turnout after a difficult weather day, at least. We're very pleased to see you here for our distinguished panel, and we in South Windsor are very, very fortunate to have the members of our panel here to discuss this challenging topic tonight. I'm Charlie Margolis. I'm the chair of the Human Relations Commission, and our charge in town is to provide information, education, and activities which enhance the community, and certainly this is one tonight. Shortly after the Boston bombings, Dr. Anwar called me and he said, "I want to have a panel discussion about violent extremism." I said, 2 words, violent extremism. That's going to pull a lot of people out, 2, 3 people maybe. He said, no. He said, people will come, and if they don't, we'll record it because this is so important. Dr. Anwar is the kind of person, he says, I think you should have a party, I'll bring everything. Food, people, house, the whole works. And he's brought everything to the party tonight in that sense, once again. Quite a remarkable man. This is not anything new. I remember back when I was in high school, you think that was a couple years ago, but no, really. I read a book called The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. It was published in 51. And he said, we lie the loudest when we lie to ourselves. He was an interesting man. He was an iconic American philosopher who spent his life working as a hod carrier in California. He carried bricks, but he was obviously a very brilliant man and thoroughly insightful. So after Boston, and after talking with Dr. Anwar, I got to thinking, what goes through the mind of a terrorist? I'm sure we all think the same things, because it's so incredulous to us, and it's so difficult to understand. How does an individual evolve from quasi-normal to doing monstrous things? And very importantly, what can be done? Everybody's talking about identification since Newtown. What can be done to identify? For me personally, I'll just share this with you, Newtown was the worst moment of my life. It's a snapshot moment that will stay embedded in my memory. When I turned on the television, I had been working with a client, and I heard what they said, and I don't cry, and I cried. And I will never forget that, and it still stays with me, and I'm not sorry that it does. So tonight we have a very special evening for you. We're very fortunate to have, as I said, very distinguished, knowledgeable, and well-known throughout the world individuals. And I get the pleasure of introducing the first member of our panel, Dr. Saud Anwar. Dr. Anwar is what I call an ambassador of peace. He is truly a remarkable man. And though I don't often read introductions, because, it sounds like the Emmys, and I want to thank my uncles, cousins, grandmother's aunt for being inspirational when I was 3, and say, what, who cares? Well, I think with this panel, we do care, because they are so absolutely phenomenal. Dr. Anwar is presently serving as chair of the Department of Internal Medicine of 2 regional hospitals here in Connecticut. His activities in volunteerism to coordinate a response in the aftermath of September 11th earned him official recognition from the American Red Cross. He has testified to the 109th Congress for the Committee on Homeland Security and about American Muslim community. He has served as a consultant to the British Department of Communities and Local Government on radicalization and violent extreme issues. He has served as the chief coordinator of an international conference on understanding radicalization and de-radicalization strategies in Hartford, which was broadcast live throughout the world. I was thinking, of course, we've all heard of him, unless we've just come back from a protracted stay of several decades in New Guinea, and they probably know about him there now anyway. But we certainly know what a remarkable man he is. He is a physician, he is a town councilor, of course, And in my opinion, I'm not sure I'm right about this, but I suspect that the Dell comic character, Superman, was modeled after him. I'm proud to call him my friend and my hero, Dr. Saud Anwar.
Thank you so much, Charlie. I don't know who you were talking about. It didn't sound like me. Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be here. It's a very important topic, and it's a very critical issue that we need to speak about and do it in an open manner. And all of us need to come together, because this is something that has impacted each and every one of us. And it has also has a situation where each one of us have a role to play in this situation. That's why it's important to have an open conversation, and hopefully today we will have a conversation amongst each other first, but later have questions that people may have. And may I also just add that the questions, nothing is off limits. So one of my goals is that everybody leaves unhappy from this room, because there are no two sides. This is only something that we have to recognize, that we are all in a situation where we need to find out why this happens and why is this happening, and what we can do to protect ourselves and protect our community and our society. And now I'm a physician, I'm a critical care specialist, but I also am a public health trained individual who looks at public health. So that person in me who talks about public health is going to speak about the whole perspective, putting things in perspective of what is the impact of this challenge, so that we keep this in mind, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. These are the various causes of death in the United States. And this is an average, of course, a few 100,000 here and there changes. Majority of the preventable deaths in the country are from tobacco smoking, overweight and obesity, alcohol, infectious disease, toxins, motor vehicle accidents, firearms, and so on and so forth. These are the death rate in the US recently had gone into 2.5 million in a year. They're changing patterns that we see, and this is something in 2015, it appears that there may be a change in motor vehicle, less people will die from car accidents than from firearms. Then let's look at the terrorist incidents that have happened since 1970. And again, this is something that you have to keep in mind from 1970s. The terrorist incidents involving bombs and explosives have thankfully not been increasing, but we are hearing more about them. Now, this is something that is important to keep in mind. Between September 11th, 2000, and I'll just take this out so that between September 12th, 2001 and the end of 2012, if the Muslim community in the entire country was 3 million, which actually according to some numbers is about 7 million, then the people who were charged with the domestic plots, and this is based on the New America Foundation data, there were 0.007% people who were charged with this. And if you look at the numbers that some people are saying is about 7 million, it's 0.003%. In the post-9/11 domestic terrorist bomb plots, 51 right-wing terrorists tried making bombs, and 5 got their supplies in a sting. For the Muslim community, or the people who claim to be Muslims, and I'll speak on that in a little bit, the 23 were tried making bombs, and 12 got their supplies in a sting. Sting means that some law enforcement agent actually acted as if they were part of the whole process, and they said, well, let's do something bad, and then they were able to make somebody act in a wrong way who were inclined to act in a wrong way. These are the fatalities from post 9/11 of domestic terrorist incidents. 29 people killed by right-wing terrorists. This is from 2001 to 2012, and 17 people killed by the person who is a Muslim who actually did this activity from a faith perspective. Look at those numbers and look at the actual number of deaths that have happened. The terrorist attacks that have happened in the US, and this is from the FBI data, 1980 to 2005, there have been many different terrorist attacks that have happened over time, and this extremists claiming to be Muslims were about 6% of all of them. So if we were to say that the 2.5 million, that's the number we had in 2012 of the deaths, the terrorism-related deaths in the US, if we were to exaggerate it, because if you want to try and get a number, let's exaggerate it, is 17 per year. and likelihood of that being caused by an individual calling him or herself as a Muslim is about 30%. That's about almost 5% people. 5 people. So on an average, we'll have question and answer. We'll take care of that. And we have put an hour for question and answers. Of all people dying each year, the likelihood of death from a terrorist attack by a group or individual calling themselves a Muslim is 0.0002%. And likelihood that someone in the US will die from a terrorist attack by someone claiming to be a Muslim is 0.000017%. And that's could have been much higher. And I'm not making in any way suggesting that it's not a big deal. Actually, it could have been much higher thanks to our law enforcement agencies and the community coming together and trying to prevent some of these things. Now, we are looking at only deaths in this situation. Anybody has an idea how many people die of lightning strike each year in the US? 50. And our exaggerated data suggests 5 people may die from a terrorist attack from Muslims. So you're 10 times more likely to be hit by lightning and dying from it. And then as opposed to by a terrorist who claims to be a Muslim. And I think that just puts in perspective. Now, however, having said all this, this is important because even one death is far too many. Even one death is unacceptable, period. And that's why we need to have a conversation. But I think it's important to put things in perspective that why we are having this conversation, but end of the day, each and every life is so valuable, and anybody who has so much hate to be able to hurt innocent people, we need to have an identification of why that happens and what we need to do. US relationship with war in Muslim majority countries is a part of the challenge as well. So that's why we need to have this conversation, because that is something that has been a part of it. The hate that we are seeing in the US and the hate that we are listening from other parts of the world about the Americans is also something to be concerned about. The violent extremists are targeting and recruiting actively via web to the US population. The Muslims in the US, the websites are being focused to try and recruit individuals, so that becomes even more relevant that it is something that we need to have an open conversation about. And the attack and patterns in other part of the world suggest that this may be likely to increase, God forbid. And I hope I'm wrong. But that's why even though the numbers are very little, it's worthwhile to have some of these conversations. So we will have this conversation and broadly into 2 components. One is the psychology of the violent extremist, and then putting knowledge into practice. What we can learn from what we know, and how do we intend to use it to prevent and protect everyone. So I have 2 speakers today, and I'm honored to introduce them. Dr. Saeed is a psychiatrist by profession. She's trained at Johns Hopkins University. She's been an educationist. She's been teaching people about various aspects of psychiatry and this aspect as well at various universities, and she's very well respected and is a part of a national group of psychiatrists, which is a committee on terrorism and political violence, which is a group of psychiatrists that looks at why do people become who they become. And she's currently serving as the president of the Muslim Community Center of Capital District in Albany. And she said, this is the first thing that you should mention in my introduction, that I'm a mother of 3 kids. And Alia is going to speak to us today about her perspective and her understanding of this process. And the 3 of us, the 3 speakers, may have different perspectives and different opinions, and that's why it's going to be a very useful conversation. And it may be totally different from the people who are in the audience. And I'm honored to also introduce my friend, Dr. Stephen Johnson. Dr. Johnson is a doctorate in philosophy, psychology, with special interest in Islamic philosophy. He has taught Islamic studies at several universities. His published work includes The Political Activity of Muslims in America, and that has been a book published. He currently participates in special study group of the American Enterprise Institute, a think tank in Washington, D.C. The group is American Citizenship Project. It is about Islam in America. And there are a number of very special people and learned people who are in the audience, and we will, during our question and answer session, have them start with some of the questions as well.